You're listening to Brandon Sports Talk, interviewing professional athletes and Paralympians and Olympians. And now for your professional athlete interview and your host, Brandon Pate. Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Australian handball player, Caleb Gahan. How are you doing today?
Mate, yeah, really good. Thanks so much for having me on. Excited to chat about some handball. Let's do it.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in playing in professional handball?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't something that was so obvious from the start. Back in 2000, I'd never even heard of handball. It was pure coincidence, like late at night, I think, watching the Sydney Olympics. And, back then, obviously, the television coverage was just whatever they wanted to show you. And this night, it happened to be handball, and it was Australia playing. I want to say they were playing Iceland or something, and I'm like, wow, this sport is incredible. So, for me, like I already played everything else. I played baseball, basketball, volleyball, Australian football, soccer. So it was, oh well, if we play all those things, let's give this other one a try. And yeah, luckily, finally managed to find a way to get into it, and it was a lot of fun for me.
As a kid growing up and going to Sydney and seeing handball for the first time, what was that experience like for you to see it in person and then eventually get to play it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like I said, I never really heard of it until those 2000 Olympics. So to see this sport is a completely new sport for me, and like not understanding the rules, but just you can see like all the physical aspects of the game, and like how fast and exciting it is, all the running and jumping and throwing, and you're like, oh man, like these are all things that I really like doing in a sport. So I really wanted to give it a try, and it took me 5 years to find somewhere in Australia where I could actually play. So by the time I actually got down to it, it was super exciting. This is this sport that I wanted to play all those years ago. Finally, here's my chance.
How was that experience like for you getting to go to college at Snuff University and getting to play handball?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Australian like university sport, it doesn't work the same way as it does in the US. There's a thing. I'm not really going to the university to play the sport. You just sort of happen to play, I guess, while you're at university. And for me, like, so I started turning up to training at Griffith University when I was 15. You got to admit, it was initially, I guess, a bit intimidating because essentially you come into a university training and everyone is 18, 19, 20 at the time, and I was just a little kid running around. But luckily enough, the guys were pretty welcoming, and everyone was keen to let me get in there and have a good go, despite the fact I was probably holding them back a little bit.
Of course, while at Griffith University and getting to play handball, what was that experience like finally getting to play handball, the sport that you saw at the Sydney Olympics?
Yeah, exactly. I think that like it really clicked for me, as I said, because I'd be playing all these other sports all through school. And handball is just that perfect combination. Like I was a decent basketball player. I was a pretty good baseball player. Okay at soccer. I threw javelin pretty well. And handball just all of a sudden, hey, here's all those skills that I'm like pretty good at, and combine them all into one, and all of a sudden, no, this is a sport that I can really play. So it was a lot of fun for me.
What was that experience like getting to make that national team for Australia and getting to play handball?
Yeah. Um, again, like handball, for me, it was fun to start with. It wasn't really something that I gave consideration to, like, oh, hey, like I'm going to be a professional handball player and play for Australia. Obviously, I saw it at the Olympics. I was aware that we had a national program. And, it might be something that I could get into. But when I first started playing, I was 15. Like, I was looking at all these older guys. They're all much better than me at the stage. And I look like that might be fun in the future. So, finally, when I got the chance, I actually got the chance in 2007 to go to the Youth World Championships. which is the first time we went in a little while. And I mean, like the chance to pull on the green and gold obviously is it's a fascinating opportunity, and the chance to go to a world championship, and then you see the difference between, I guess, handball in Australia, which is at that stage very developing, and obviously Australia is still a small country when it comes to handball world. We got to go and watch these teams from Denmark and Croatia and Korea and Spain and play against these guys from Sweden, and under 19s from Spain and Denmark and Sweden, they're probably full-time professionals by that stage, whereas we're all just sort of a bunch of little amateurs who play recreationally at the university. But it's eye-opening, and it's still something you're proud to achieve no matter what.
Of course, for you, what was that first experience like getting to step onto that handball court and getting to represent the country of Australia?
Yeah, exactly. That sort of pride, I think it's hard to for a lot of people to sort of empathize with that level of like okay, I understand that in Australia it's a minor sport, but like I'm still stepping on the court against the best players in the world, and I get to represent my country, and I stand there hand in hand or arm in arm with 16 of my best mates, and we sing the national anthem before the game starts. And I think that feeling is something that's kept me going definitely for the last 15 years with the national team. Is I want to keep chasing that feeling of pride for sure.
What are some of your biggest accomplishments in the sport of handball?
Yeah, I look like I would say start with that youth world championship. Is definitely not the biggest accomplishment, but it's a big stage, and that was definitely something that set the scene for me. I think in terms of how far I wanted to push my handball career. Then obviously in 2013, in 2012, made my debut with the national team at the Oceania tournament. Qualified, we won that one, so we get to qualify for the World Championships, and off we go to Spain. So we played the World Championship in Madrid in the same group as Spain as well. So I guess we got to play. I don't want to talk too much about the result, but playing in Madrid against Spain, in front of 12,000 people, it's I guess once in a lifetime experience that
Of
haven't
course,
really been able
what
to.
was that feeling like for you making that debut for the national team for the first time, getting to play in that tournament?
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's so exciting, and I guess the Oceania is more. I'm not going to say more fun, but it's a different experience because you go into Oceania at Oceania Championship, we're the favorites, and so there's sort of an expectation that hey, like now we're the Australian team, we're the favorites, and we have to go and win this thing, and okay, so now I have to perform as well as I can. I want to make this team, and I want to perform really well so that I get selected to the team to go to the World Championships. Yeah, and the World Championships then is sort of the other end of the spectrum. It's like, look, like we're the underdogs, and there's nothing to lose here. So, okay, you're stepping on the court against the best in the world. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard, but there's nothing to lose. Just get out there, do what you can do, and the game will unfold as it unfolds, I guess.
What was that preparation like preparing for the World Championships? And then what was that experience like going to the World Championships and playing?
Yeah. Preparation in the lead up to the World Championship. So basically, we had about 9 months between the Oceania Championship and then the World Championship, and that was just um, that was the step up in training. I think from then, so at that time we'd had Lee Schofield, one of the Sydney Olympians, had moved back to Brisbane from Australia, and so he came in and took over coaching for us, and he just sort of said, "Look, like guys, you're all decent handball players. You've got some potential, but you have not yet experienced the work required to be ready to get on the court with the best in the world." So, it was a big step up, but for me, yeah, loved it because it's hard work, but it was hard work, but you get to see the result week in, week out. You're just getting better and better and better working at that level.
What does a typical game day match look like for the sport of handball?
Yeah, I mean, in the tournament, it's different sort of day to day, I guess, as you have night games, morning games, that sort of thing. But for me and for the national team, I guess we sort of wake up. Depending if we've got a late game, we might have like a morning, do like a training, a shoot around session, maybe like 40, 45 minutes. Obviously have your meal together. And then a lot of the guys, some of the guys have different preparation throughout the day. Like one of the roommate that I always have, Tim Anderson, he loves a nap. Post meal, 4 hours before the game, he's off to bed straight away. Not me. I'm awake. I'm active doing things like I like relaxing with the guys. We play some cards. Settle in for a team meeting, probably sort of 2-3 hours before. Talk about specifically revise what strategies we're going with, against this team. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do we need to do better? What can we work on from yesterday or from our previous game? You know, board that bus, and then from there, you're probably at the stadium 2 hours before game. Everyone might, again, different routines. Some guys are just settling in, listening to music. Me, I like to wander and see what the game on the court is doing, previous game, see what our next opponents might look like, and just settle into the atmosphere, I guess, of the stadium. And then, probably about an hour before game, it's time to step in, and that's when I'm, I guess, game mode on.
Of course, for you, do you have any particular routines and rituals like first putting on your shoes before, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I do, I guess. I mean, more so daily routines. Like for me, if I'm up in the morning game time, I usually I want a nice quiet coffee by myself, first thing in the morning. Always easy because, like I said, my roommate Tim, he could sleep through anything, mate. So I'm up. I'll have myself a nice half hour to just sit and think about, I guess, my role in the game and what I want to do better, um, that sort of thing. And then yeah, in the change room, I don't think I have too many eccentricities, but I guess there's a particular way you sort of put your shoes on. You got to make sure you get the tape on your shoe for the resin just right, that sort of thing. Um, Always jersey on last for me. That's what.
Of course, for my listeners that don't know about the sport of handball, how do you describe it and how do you play it?
Yeah, I usually describe it as water polo on a court, which doesn't help too many people, I guess. But a lot of people are going to describe it as like a combination of basketball and soccer, which is pretty good, I guess. If you just think about it, there's a goal at each end. It's a pretty big court, about twice the size of a basketball court, 40 by 20 meters. Goal at each end. There's a little restricted area around the goal, which no one's allowed in except the goalkeeper. And then there's probably 6 guys standing in front of that restricted area trying to keep you further away from the goal. So you're basically moving the ball, pretty classic sort of, I guess, draw and pass motions to create some space in the defense where you can take an opportunity and you can jump into that restricted area and throw the ball at the goal before you land. Otherwise, you might generate some movement where you can jump and shoot over the defense. That sort of thing.
What is it like, obviously, getting to play different countries like Team USA and Team Canada in handball?
Yeah, it's exciting. Like I haven't had the opportunity to play the USA or Canada yet, but we had a rematch against GB actually not too long ago. It's always an exciting one for, I guess, Australians. I guess it's sort of like when you step on and you play one-on-one against your dad when you're 13 years old, right? Uh, Great Britain is there, and they're sort of like, oh, hey, the monarchy, and like our mum and dad, and we want to go and show them that we're all grown up, and we want to beat them. So you have like those fun little rivalries like between those countries, GB and New Zealand. And then you have those other countries, Spain, Croatia. I mean, some of the big ones I've ever played, Egypt, these guys. And like that's just another level of it's almost hard not to be in awe of some of those guys out there, because these are guys you watch week in, week out on TV, and you're like, oh man, like this guy is a phenomenal player. Right now, this is the best player in the world, and now I'm going to step out there and compete against him. And like it's fun. Obviously, it's a challenge, and again, I think if you go in with that attitude that there's nothing to lose, then it's just an experience you can't match anywhere else.
As a handball player, what has that been like, obviously, getting to go against some of those different countries that may have popular players that you're like, oh my God, I recognize them or I looked up to them?
Yeah, yeah, that happens to me a lot. a really interesting one is like, so when I played the youth world championship actually, and Croatia had this guy Domagoj Dufak. So like, okay, he was probably pretty unknown in the handball world except in Croatia at that stage, and like he turned up for the final. All the Croatian fans turned up for the final. And the guy was already a legend. Um, yeah, we're like watching this guy being like, oh my god, like look how good this guy is. And then 6 years later, 2013, all of a sudden I'm stepping on the court against him. And I think it was that year that he won World Player of the Year. He might have been World Player of the Year that year, or at least he was the World Championship MVP. Um, and so all of a sudden you have this guy who 4 or 5 years ago you were like looking up to as some sort of idol, and now you have to be like, oh, okay, look, like you may be my idol, but right now I'm going to come out here and give you my best shot and show you what I've got.
Of course, what has that experience been like getting to play some of those countries like Spain, Chile, and New Zealand that may not be popular in the Olympic area, but may be popular in the handball area?
Yeah, exactly. I think that a lot of those countries, handball is, I mean, second to football in a lot of those countries, but it's a big deal for some of those countries, and like they take a lot of pride, I guess, in their handball team. And so, I mean, like Spain, obviously, in 2013 is a particular example, but right there, they were this best handball country in the world. It was probably the second most popular sport in the country, and so they had legions of fans turning out for that sort of thing. Comparatively to like if you play New Zealand, and okay, like New Zealand have the All Blacks, and then they have like their handball team is sort of way down the rung. So it's an interesting experience to sort of see those countries who have a lot of success in other sports versus those countries who like handball is their primary success, I guess, story.
What is that like, obviously, getting to meet your fans and having them ask for your autographs and photos with you?
Yeah, that was a surreal experience, I guess, because I didn't realize I had any fans until that started happening. I think it's funny because you put it in perspective. When you come from Australia to play at the Handball World Championship, you don't really expect that, like, oh, we're going to have fans like lining up for our autograph. But, little kids turn up to watch the Handball World Championship. And, okay, you may be from Australia, you may be from like a not particularly, I guess, handball dominant country, but you are on the court at the Handball World Championship. Those kids are looking up to you, and they think you are like a phenomenal handball player. So that was like definitely the first time I've ever experienced that, and I was like, it does put it in perspective a lot that like, okay, although this sport is minor in Australia, the level that we have to compete at is, I mean, this is world class handball, and we got to be ready for that.
Of course, what was that moment like when you had that moment I made it in professional handball?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever had like a singular moment where I'm like, look, I've made it as a handball player. For me, handball was always just like I enjoyed doing it. Um, and I was getting a lot of cool opportunities with it. Handball, it took me to Spain for the World Championship, then it took me to Spain for my master's degree. It took me to Slovenia to play for a few years. It took me to Saudi Arabia, to Dubai, to Korea. It takes me all over the world, and to places that I probably wouldn't go if it wasn't for handball, I think. And that's yeah.
During that time of going to Spain, what was that like balancing getting your master's degree while playing professional handball?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, of course, but I think to a degree you need something outside of the handball court. I think if you're, in my opinion at least, like if you are only about handball and training for handball, and every second of your day is handball, 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 then you might sort of get a bit of that burnout and a bit lost in yourself there. So I think it's important to have, I guess, aspects outside, and for some people that might just be like hobbies, and other tasks. But for me, it was okay. I want to further my learning, and knowing that in reality, like I'm not going to be retiring for the rest of my life off my handball earnings. I guess it was important to move forward in a career outside of handball as well for for when that time comes.
Who are some of the people in the sport of handball that you look up to?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, Dominic Duvnyak has he's always sort of been like my I guess pinnacle of handball players. Looked like he was definitely up there, world's best. If you go, don't let him hear me say this, but if you go 10 years back, he was the best player in the world. And he's still just out there slugging away. He plays for a great German club. He plays really great handball, and something I really admire about him is that okay, he has a really good position with a great club, but when he steps on the court for his country, he is at another level. And he has obviously it's so obvious how much pride he has representing his country and getting that opportunity to take Croatia to might be to an Olympic final or to a world champ final. Um, I guess yeah, and for me that's really sort of admirable to see that, and it really motivates me as well.
Who would you who would you inspire your game after?
Yeah, I mean, again, he was up there for sure. When I saw him in 2007, I was like, oh man, this is the guy you want to be. That's for sure. Unfortunately, I'm not as tall as him, so it wasn't going to be too realistic to emulate everything that he does. So there are a few guys that get around, Mikkel Hansen and Nikola Karabatic, who was sort of the I guess pinnacle of the handball world back when I was moving into my I guess elite status handball playing. So when we played the world championship, that sort of thing. Definitely guys that you sort of see how they play, and you really want to emulate what they can do, and take what you can, learn lessons from how they play the game and how they see the game. And nowadays you have to sort of try and adapt to the new way of handball and how it's moving in a different direction it's moving in. And Denmark just has all these incredible young guys moving through that are now just lightning fast and agile. And so need some new idols, I think.
What would you tell your younger self that is first getting started in handball, looking back on your career now?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd change anything. I probably would have tried to convince myself to work a little harder, a little earlier in my life at handball. But I don't sit there and think like, oh, I made the mistake of not doing this. I guess committed to handball probably a little bit too late to be a lifetime professional handball player, but I still got to experience all those things. And again, like if I'd done things differently, it might not have worked out that way. I thought about moving to France as soon as I finished high school. Like, oh well, if I just take a shot and move to France, pick up a random job and just try and play handball, okay, yeah, it might have worked really well. I might have had a good long career as a professional handball player, or I might have, I don't know, begun to hate handball when I was 19. So I don't know if there's anything I'd say other than yeah, maybe just work a little bit harder when you're younger.
What advice would you give those people in college that are looking to play handball?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is have fun with it, like, and just enjoy yourself. Like, the game will never be, I guess, you need to enjoy it to work hard at it. If you want to spend time and get better, then the first step is to enjoy it. If you commit immediately to like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna try this new sport and I'm gonna go as hard as I can to become a professional player, like I don't know. There's aspects of things where you might burn out on that sport. I think, settle in, get to know everyone around you. Like for me, like my best friends are all handball players. They're all guys that I've played handball with for a long time because, that's the most enjoyable time for me. And that's when I'm having the most fun, when I'm stepping on the court with them. So I think appreciate all those moments that are going on around you whilst you're trying to learn the sport.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to play handball for a national team like Team USA, Canada, or even Australia?
Yeah, I guess yeah, multiple things, but look, like you got to understand that you are. I mean, USA not so much nowadays. They're kind of getting up there in the world, but understand that you're stepping on the court against, I guess, countries that have been professional or had elite level handball for so much longer than us. And it's a very popular sport in those countries. And so, like, regulate your expectations for what you're trying to achieve, set realistic goals for what you're trying to do. Make sure that if you are an Australian handball player, a Canadian handball player, USA handball player, and you're stepping on the court against Germany, it shouldn't be an expectation that you're going to have a world dominating game. You just need to do what you can do, understand what your game is, bring your identity to the court and play it.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you out on social media?
Yeah, you can find me Instagram, Facebook. I'm just straight Caleb Gahan, nice and easy. My name is unique enough that I got in there early, I think, and easy enough to track me down.
Thank you again, Caleb Gahan, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with Australian handball.
Perfect. Thank you so much, mate. Thanks for having me.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Caleb Gahan, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks, mate.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.